My name is Clara, and if you had asked me at 26 what family meant, I would have told you it was complicated. I grew up with my mother, a woman whose love I never doubted, but whose choices often left me scarred. The most defining of those choices was marrying Frank, the man who would become my stepfather. Frank came into our lives when I was just 12. At first, I wanted to believe he would be the father figure I never had. He was tall, commanding, the kind of man who filled every room he walked into. But beneath that presence, there was something cold in his eyes, something that made me feel like I was never fully seen. Over the years, that coldness turned into something worse: erasure. He rarely called me by my name, never introduced me as a stepdaughter, and when people asked, he would say things like, "Oh, Clara? She's just around." I was always just around. Never his, never part of his world. But for my mother's sake, I swallowed it. She loved him, or at least she convinced herself she did, and I loved her enough not to challenge the walls he built around me. That wasn't until the day everything cracked open, the day at the hospital when Frank spoke one sentence that nearly destroyed me, until the truth clawed its way out. It was a rainy Wednesday afternoon when my phone rang. I was at work, staring at a spreadsheet that felt endless, when my screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Something in my chest tightened as I answered. "Is this Clara Dawson?" a voice asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "This is St. Matthew's Hospital. Your stepfather, Frank Dawson, has been admitted. We need an immediate family member to come down." Immediate family. The words stung because I knew Frank would never use them for me. Still, I closed my laptop, grabbed my coat, and rushed out the door. Whatever I felt about him, my mother was out of town on a work trip, and I couldn't abandon him completely. By the time I reached the hospital, the sky was already dark, and the smell of antiseptic hit me as soon as I walked through the sliding doors. My shoes echoed against the linoleum as I made my way to the emergency desk. "I'm here for Frank Dawson," I told the receptionist. She checked her screen. "He's in room 214. They're stabilizing him. Doctor will be out shortly." I hurried down the hall, my heart pounding, even though I wasn't sure if it was from worry or nerves. When I arrived, I saw Frank sitting on the bed, pale but awake, an IV hooked into his arm. His expression soured the moment his eyes met mine. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice sharp. "I got the call. They said you needed family," I said quietly. His lip curled. Family. Right. Before I could reply, the doctor walked in, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Dawson, we need to confirm a few things. Is this your daughter?" The doctor gestured toward me. Frank didn't hesitate. His voice was calm, almost casual, but it cut like glass. "She's not family." The air froze. The doctor blinked, looking between us. My chest tightened so hard it hurt, but I forced myself to stand tall. "I'm his stepdaughter," I clarified, my voice trembling just enough to betray me. Frank shook his head. "No, she's nothing." The words landed harder than any blow. Nothing. That was all I had ever been to him, but hearing it spoken out loud in front of strangers stripped me bare. The doctor cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, I'll need to see immediate family for medical authorization." "That would be my wife," Frank interrupted. "She's away right now, but she'll be back tomorrow. Until then, this girl doesn't have any say." The doctor nodded stiffly and left the room. I stood frozen, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My hands shook, but I refused to let Frank see me crumble. "I shouldn't have come," I said finally, my voice low. "You got that right," he muttered. I walked out before the tears could fall, my heels clicking down the corridor like gunshots. I thought that was the end of it, just another humiliation to add to the list. But as I waited near the nurse's station, debating whether to leave, something shifted. A young nurse with kind eyes approached me. She held a manila folder against her chest, her knuckles white. "Are you Clara?" she asked softly. "Yes," I whispered, my throat raw. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "I'm not supposed to say anything, but you should know this." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The file says Frank is your legal guardian. He adopted you when you were 14. Legally, you are family. He's been lying to you and everyone for years. I stared at her, my mind spinning. What? She nodded. It's all in the file. Birth certificate updated, paperwork signed, you are family. He's been hiding it for years. I stood there, my mind spinning, all those years of being erased, pushed aside, treated like I didn't belong, and the entire time, he had hidden the truth. I wasn't nothing. I wasn't invisible. I was his daughter. And now, for the first time in my life, I had proof. I walked out of that hospital with the rain pouring down on me, my clothes soaked, my heart burning. Frank thought he could erase me with a sentence, but he didn't know that the truth was already written down, sealed, undeniable. For years, he had stolen my sense of belonging, made me doubt myself, convinced me I was disposable. But now I had the weapon that could shatter his carefully crafted image. He had spent his life hiding it. But soon, everyone would know. And that was the beginning of my revenge.
The rain didn't stop the night I left the hospital. It came down in sheets, washing the streets, the kind of storm that felt like the world itself was trying to cleanse something rotten, but nothing could wash away the sting of Frank's words. She's not family. And yet, for the first time in my life, I had something to hold on to, a truth so solid it felt like stone in my hands. I was his daughter, legally, undeniably. The nurse hadn't lied. When I'd gotten home that night, soaked to the bone, I couldn't stop pacing. I needed to see it for myself. So I logged on to the county records website, shaky fingers typing in Clara Dawson. And there it was, filed 13 years ago, signed in black ink, Frank Dawson, legal adoptive parent. He had erased me with his words, but the paper told another story. And that was when the cracks in his kingdom began to show. The next morning, my phone buzzed endlessly. Missed calls, voicemails, most from my mother, some even from Frank. I ignored them all. I needed space. I needed to think. By the second day, Mom showed up at my apartment. Her hair frizzed from the rain, her face drawn with worry. "Clara, why didn't you answer me?" she demanded, wrapping me in a hug before I could protest. "Because I needed time," I said flatly. Her eyes searched mine. "The hospital told me what happened. Frank said you overreacted, that you stormed out." I laughed bitterly. Overreacted? He told the doctor I wasn't family, Mom, right to my face, like I was a stranger. Her shoulders slumped, her hands tightening around mine. "You know how he gets when he's scared. No." My voice cracked like a whip. "Not this time. He's been doing this my whole life, pretending I don't belong. But guess what, Mom? I do. I saw the records. He adopted me, legally. He's been lying to you, too." Her eyes widened. "What?" "He's known all these years and let me feel like I was nothing, and you let him." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. The following week, Frank was discharged from the hospital. Against my better judgment, I went to visit him, not for him, but for my mother. He sat in his recliner, pale but smug like a king on his throne. "Well, if it isn't the runaway," he sneered when I walked in. "I didn't run," I said evenly. "I walked away from your lies." His eyes narrowed. "Careful, Clara. You've always had a dramatic streak. Don't let it get you into trouble." "You mean the truth?" I tilted my head. "Like the truth you've been hiding for 13 years? For a flicker of a second, I saw it. Fear. Real fear in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced with that cold, calculating smirk. "You don't know what you're talking about. And if you value your mother's happiness, you'll keep it that way." That was his weapon, always, my mother. He knew I would never hurt her. But this time, his grip was slipping. Over the next month, Frank doubled down on control. He told family friends that I was acting out, that stress from work had made me unstable. At dinners, he made subtle digs about how some people didn't understand loyalty. But the more he tried to erase me, the more determined I became. I started gathering everything I could: copies of the adoption paperwork, records of the mortgage payments I had quietly made for my parents over the years, emails showing how often Frank had relied on me to bail him out of messes he'd hidden from my mother. Piece by piece, I built a picture, one where I wasn't the outsider, but the backbone he had always tried to deny. One evening, I got a call from the same nurse who had whispered the truth to me. Her name was Maya. "I probably shouldn't be calling you," she said, her voice low, "but I need you to know something. Your stepfather asked to change his emergency contact yesterday. He listed your mother only, erased you again." I sighed. That doesn't surprise me. "But here's the thing," she continued. "When I pulled up his file, your name is still legally there. He can't erase that, not without going to court. And even then, it would raise questions." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "Thank you, Maya. You've given me more than you know." The final straw came at a family gathering, my mother's birthday. Frank made a toast, standing tall with his glass raised. "To my beautiful wife," he said, smiling, "and to the family that means everything to me." He gestured to my mother, to my half-siblings, to everyone but me. "And of course," he added with a smirk, "to those who stand with us, not against us." Laughter rippled around the room. My stomach turned. That was when I realized Frank didn't just want to erase me, he wanted to humiliate me. But what he didn't know was that the game had already shifted. The truth was mine now, and I wasn't afraid to use it. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling and thought about every slight, every humiliation, every time Frank had made me feel like a ghost in my own family. And for the first time in my life, I felt no fear. Because I finally understood something. Frank had spent years building his kingdom on lies, and I was holding the match that would burn it to the ground.
Frank had spent years perfecting his image, the devoted husband, the respected man, the patriarch of a happy family. But every image cracks eventually, and I was ready to shatter his. I didn't need fists or shouting. I needed the truth and patience. It began with a phone call. I reached out to my mother's cousin, a lawyer I trusted more than anyone. I laid out everything: the adoption records, the bills I'd paid, the way Frank had systematically erased me. "You have a solid case," he said after a long pause. "If you want to challenge his guardianship or even expose him publicly, the paperwork alone proves he lied. He can't run from that." That was all I needed. The perfect opportunity arrived 2 weeks later. A family dinner at my parents' house, a tradition Frank had never let me escape from. This time, though, I didn't dread it. I prepared for it. I walked in carrying a neat leather folder. Dinner started the way it always did. Frank presiding like a king, making jokes at my expense, my mother trying to smooth everything over, my siblings caught in the middle. When dessert was served, Frank stood up, glass in hand. "To family," he said loudly, his voice booming. "To those who know what loyalty means. And to those who don't, well, may they find their way someday." His eyes locked on me, and the smirk spread across his face. The room chuckled nervously. I stood too, heart pounding but steady. "I'd like to add to that," I said, raising my glass. Frank's smirk faltered. I set down my glass and opened the folder. For years, I've listened to speeches about loyalty, about family, about who belongs and who doesn't.
but since we're all here, maybe it's time for some honesty. I pulled out the papers and laid them on the table. These, I said clearly, are my adoption records, signed when I was 14. Legally, Frank Dawson is my father. He has known this all along. Gasps filled the room. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My siblings whispered in confusion. Frank's face turned crimson. This is nonsense. Old paperwork, irrelevant. It's the truth, I cut in. For years, you told me I wasn't family. You told others I didn't belong. But the law says otherwise. And so do the bills I paid to keep this family afloat. The mortgage, the medical expenses, the tuition. I've been the one standing behind all of you while he pretended I was nothing. The room was silent, except for the sound of my mother quietly crying. Frank lunged for the papers, but I pulled them back. You can't erase me anymore, I said, my voice steady. You've built your life on lies, but tonight, everyone sees the truth. You didn't protect this family. You used it. You used Mom. You used me. And you tried to bury me under your pride. My mother looked at him then. Really looked. As if she was seeing him for the first time. Frank, is this true? He stammered, blustered, tried to twist it, but the damage was done. The mask had cracked. The days that followed moved quickly. My mother stayed with me for a while, refusing to speak to him. My siblings kept calling, apologizing for years of silence. And Frank? His kingdom crumbled. Family friends who once praised him now whispered about his lies. His business partners, once charmed by his confidence, questioned his integrity. Even his oldest allies turned cold. The man who had erased me was suddenly invisible himself. A week later, I went back to the hospital for a routine checkup. And there, in the waiting room, I saw Frank again. Alone. His shoulders slumped, his face haggard. For a moment, he looked up at me, and I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Not of me, but of the truth that had finally caught up with him. I walked past him without a word. For years, Frank tried to erase me with silence, with dismissive words, with lies whispered behind closed doors. He thought family was a game of control, that he could decide who belonged and who didn't. But here's the truth. Family isn't defined by the lies people tell to protect their pride. It's defined by resilience, by truth, by the ones who refuse to disappear. He told a doctor I wasn't family. But when the file was read out loud, when the papers hit the table, when the truth could no longer be buried, he learned the one lesson he never expected. You can't erase someone who refuses to vanish. And me? I didn't just reclaim my place in the family. I burned down the throne he tried to sit on.